Good evening and welcome to the BS and Beer Show. BS stands for Building Science. Tonight we're going to talk about our yearly Halloween show, and we're going to do what's good, what's bad, and what the hell are we doing with the internationally renowned Green Police. Woohoo! So I'm Emily Mottram, and for all my bourbon fans in the audience, we're having a old fashioned with Angel's Envy, if you want to know what kind of bourbon. Um, BS and Beer is an independent grassroots movement to share building science knowledge through the local meetup groups and our Zoom show. So the brew crew and our guests volunteer their time each month to bring you what we hope is fun and informative. We encourage you to find a local BS and Beer discussion group. They're listed, the ones that we know of, on our website. I think we're getting close to 40 local groups, which is awesome. So we also encourage you to start your own. So visit the bsandbeershow.com for more information. Post questions and comments in the chat box. Make sure you click all panelists and attendees or everyone. Otherwise, the only people who see it are the panelists. So make sure that you check that every time you post. The video recording for tonight's show will be available on Green Building Advisor, and all past shows can be found there and on our YouTube channel through the link on the BS and Beer Show. Thank you to our media partners, Green Building Advisor and Fine Home Building, for helping us make that happen every week. So introduce yourself in the comments section. Let us know you're here and what you're drinking. And Mike's going to tell you about announcements.
Thanks, Emily. Mike Maines in Maine. I am drinking a Bellflower Kaleidoscope. You can't see it, but it's a really pretty can. It tastes good. A nice brewery in Portland. For announcements, first I want to congratulate Travis and Joe for selling out yet another building science symposium in Chicago next week. I attended the one in Boston last month, and I have to say it's a really fun way to learn about building science, and it is an incredible value as well. I can't beat that or the fun. Unfortunately, that is it for this year's symposium series, but don't miss attending one close to you in 2025. It will be worth it, I guarantee. In Atlanta on December 4th and 5th is the Build Her Roadshow. It is a women in construction event centered on building science training for hot and humid climates, as well as business sessions meant to enhance business acumen and networking to engage personal growth. We'll post a link where you can see the schedule, learn about the speakers, and sign up for the event. To tease our topic next month, the November show will be on paint and finishes with expert guests Justin Fink and Patrick McComb. I guarantee you will learn more than you think you will. Both have a lot of knowledge on the ins and outs of finishes. And I have to say, talking about paint is much more fun than watching it dry. If anyone has an event coming up they want to promote, go ahead and post it in the chat box, and I will turn it over to Travis for introductions.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the kind praise. The symposium thing is a real pleasure to do. It's a privilege and an honor. So thank you for that. There is a pre-symposium happy hour that I dropped a link in the chat to. If you're coming into Chicago, join us at CETA for that. And now, I'm Travis Brungard. I'm in Kansas City, and I'm drinking a crappy beer, but in a cool koozie. So it's a silver bullet. It's the end of summer. It's rough.
Oh,
Yeah. Been that kind of day, Ben. Anyway, on to our guests. We have the privilege of having Carl Seville back with us. Of course, he's the principal at SK Collaborative in Decatur, Georgia, where he and his team work with architects, developers, builders, and owners to make their new and existing buildings more energy efficient, sustainable, and of course, to achieve green building certifications. Green Police notwithstanding. Their services also include building envelope inspections and testing for air and water intrusion, plan reviews, professional training, program development, and technical writing. I think Carl can even draw some pretty pictures if you give him enough money and alcohol. Carl holds many distinctions, but none more impressive than being half of the dynamic duo, the Green Police, where he and Michael Anschel.
yeah.
Oh, you broke me, Carl. It's too soon. Where he and Michael Anschel cover hot topics in green building. Of course, you can reach Carl's business at the link dropped in the chat. That's SK Collaborative. Carl, welcome. What are you drinking, my friend?
Water. Not very interesting tonight.
Me too. All right. Well, then I guess we'll move on to Michael. Michael Anschel's principal of OA Design, Build, and Architecture there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he and his team focus on designing and building green, durable, efficient, healthy, and beautiful spaces that people tend to love to live in. After growing up in Minneapolis and living in China and Japan, including a stint as a TV show host in China, I'm hoping it was a game show, and I hope it was the unbeatable Bonzuke. Ah! Giant kendama. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, Michael's applied. Excuse me. After being a show host in China, Michael applied his background in fine arts, art history, and architecture to remodeling and renovation, which grew into Otogawa Anschel Design and Build Architecture. Of course, he is the other half. Apparently, the lesser half, according to Carl, of the infamous Green Police. If you want to reach out to Michael, you can get his link at the chat there. It's, of course, Otogawa Anschel. And of course, that leads me to Michael. Happy New Year. What are you drinking?
Happy New Year. I am drinking a 2021 Malbec from some random vineyard in Argentina.
The Argentines do a great Malbec. Well done, sir.
Yeah.
And where did you get that awesome shirt? Because I want one.
I got this Green Police shirt, geez, back when we were doing, what year was that, Carl? Was that like...
I don't know. It was a San Francisco trip, I think. You showed up in that.
So yeah,
Probably the classiest thing he wore in San Francisco, I'm guessing.
that was the trip with the luchador masks. So that was a different trip.
I think that was the same trip. Yeah.
That was where we showed up for
the ACI evening event. We showed up with Mexican wrestling masks and cases of beer.
Yes.
I love this. This is the video I want. Come on, guys.
Where are the Mexican wrestling hats?
I think we lost them. I have a picture of it, though. I'll see if I can pull it up and we can share it.
That was one of our better presentations, and it was well received by the audience, especially when we gave them beer.
Yes, that makes sense. I don't think I have anything else to do to lead this off other than to turn you guys loose, and I guess we're gonna do some Q&A. But the chaos always ensues when you invite the Green Police, so why not unleash the fury? Do you guys want to start with the questions? Emily, are we starting with your questions? Is that what we're doing?
I think so. My favorite Halloween episode with Carl and Michael was when Ben wanted to ask the only question they wouldn't let him ask the whole time. So I think Ben, you should tee it up. What's the worst question you can ask them to kick it off?
All right. So being the Green Police, what color green should I paint my house?
Oh man, I'm not a color guy. I don't think I have a good answer for you on that one. Sorry, Ben.
Sorry.
Chartreuse.
All right. So
I think Benjamin Moore. What would that be? I think somewhere in the 400s, like 439, 438, somewhere in there. There's some nice sagey greens, but the HC line, their historical color palette, there's like in the HCs, there's some really good muted, because you're up there in the woods, with all the wood stuff happening and
all the wood stuff happening. It is a
Michael's flipping
house, so that would be appropriate.
There it is. There's the color.
All right. So what have we learned from the past that is creating positive change now or in the future? What can we learn from that? What have you done in the past that has resulted in positive changes today?
I think the one thing that I've learned is the air leakage and vapor movement connection. That's the one thing that, like, that once I learned that in presentations from people like Joe and other books and things like that, it's like, wow, I get this. It explains like 90% of the stuff we need to know. If you seal the air leaks, you basically control like the 90% of your problems in a building.
There was no misinformation in that. I'm not sure how to react. Everything is supposed to be a one-line.
We'll get there. Don't worry about it.
It didn't feel like a zinger, Carl. Can you do a little squeaky horn or something after you give me a good answer?
I have some good comments when we get to other questions. I didn't have a great one for that.
No witticisms. That's just real useful information. I applaud you.
I guess we have to start out with something super useful, so in case it devolves into less useful information.
In case.
Love it.
So I'll add the thing that I remember looking at a video that we did from probably 12, 15 years ago where we were talking about ventilated rain screen products that were on the market, and if we could get folks to just do that one thing, that one step, what a dramatic difference it would make for the resilience of our buildings. And it's just, I find it also interesting that, 12, 15 years later, we're saying the exact same thing, and that
only a few more people are listening.
and a dozen more people, now people are pouring water bottles behind their cladding, and they're, making little TikToks out of it. But it's remarkable how much has stayed the same, from the early 2000s when we, first kind of dipped our toes into all of this to now. And it's, same stuff, just trying to repackage the messaging and reword the messaging and find yet another way to communicate things. So
I made that post on Instagram a couple weeks ago. I found that building magazine from like 1934, and they were advertising adding another layer of glazing for comfort and health and durability back in 1934. And they were advertising the miracles of wood fiber insulation back in 1934. So it's like all of these things that we think we're like reinventing the wheel. It's like, no, we just forgot about that thing we did a generation ago, and we're stumbling back into it again.
I think that was 3 generations ago, man.
yeah.
Well, yeah, but you get my. Well, it's one. What
one
how
of
old are you, Carl?
Carl's generations,
Carl's.
3 of yours.
All right, I got a good one for you, Michael. What have you knowingly let a client do even though you knew better?
I saw that in the leaked questions document, and I was
I
like,
didn't see that one. You didn't send me that question.
He used it. He used his space lasers to get that one.
I'm Jewish too, so it's my holiday as well. And I have space lasers.
I don't think they allow you near the controls, though, Carl.
I do think it's kind of apropos that you do have 2 Jews on for
Oh,
New
no,
Year's
it's just-
for the Halloween show. It's something kind of genius about that.
It's kismet.
I have, so I think that's actually a serious question, because there's always this balance between, for us in the private sector, doing projects for wealthy clients, right? You can push so far, and then at some point you're on this weird place of like the client being like, stop telling me to do this. I'm not interested in that. I don't care. I don't want to hear about it, right? So there's this fine line with like, what can you sneak into the project and what can't you, and where is there dollars to spend and where they don't want to spend them. So I'm going to use a recent example because it happened, and I kind of hate myself a little bit for it. So, that's I have to atone for this sin that I've committed, of allowing that big Pillsbury Castle project that we just did. When we got into that, they had put open cell foam, spray polyurethane foam, on the roof deck, which in our climate is a big no-no. And there was no vapor retarder anywhere in the system. And lo and behold, there was, rotted roof decking and all kinds of things going on. And surprise, surprise. And the client was upset about like having to tear any of it out, and really pushed for us to leave a lot of it there, like deal with the parts where the roof was bad, but ignore the rest. And we're looking at this $7 million project, and we're running to build it, as designing as we go. And I kind of threw my hands up and said, fine. Technically we're not doing envelope, we're not doing exterior work, so exposed areas, we'll fix those, but anything that we haven't uncovered, we're not going to be tearing that open to fix it. But I still think it was very much the wrong thing to do. So,
and here's a letter from our lawyer saying, we warned you, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say literally every day. I work with primarily multifamily developers, and I'd say that 90% of the projects, there's oversized air conditioning, poor ventilation systems, and I've lately been pretty much saying in our climate, most climates, you have to put a dehumidifier in now, or you'll put one in later and spend a lot of money with lawyers. And they keep VEing it out. So it's it's like we've gotten subpoenaed on projects. Our records have gotten subpoenaed. I've been called in to look at a project with there's humidity problems, and I can tell them on the phone where the problem came from. They have a ton and a half of air conditioning in a 700 square foot apartment and no dehumidifier. It's like, duh. It's like in a humid climate. It's like, what do you expect? But I can't make them change it.
Yeah.
I don't know who I heard it from, so if you're on here and you said it, I'll appreciate it and just repeat what you said. But I heard someone recently say it's not value engineering, it's value elimination. That is what we're doing.
I didn't say it, but that's absolutely true.
Value elimination.
Yeah.
And when it comes to attorneys' letters absolving you of responsibility, I've heard from several people who are experts in representing architects that those aren't really absolving you. Like if you're involved in a project, your responsibility is to do it right. Otherwise, you are responsible. Which makes me glad I'm not an architect. I'm just a designer. But it's a
the hard pill to swallow.
So I snuck this into the chat, and I'm totally breaking the order of things because I have to leave a little bit early for baseball tonight. So I'm going to ask this very important prepared question to the both of you, and I think this might be the most important thing that was ever said. So don't screw it up, gentlemen.
We'll try.
As the entirety of the green police, that makes you guys enforcement, sure, but also judge, jury, and executioner. I want to know what violations warrant citations, what's the associated fine schedule, and then what of these violations would warrant jail time, or perhaps even execution. Like, you guys have a real responsibility. It's a small force, and you're mighty. But I got to know where the rules are because I don't want to end up in Michael's basement.
I have seriously thought about making citations for people who leave the ceiling fans on their front porch when no one's sitting there.
Excellent.
That one makes me completely crazy. And it was one of my neighbor actually had the fan running nonstop. It never turned off for like a year.
They're trying to collect all the dust from the exterior environment and store it on the blades. It's a filtration system, Carl.
I told one of my other neighbors, and she goes, well, my cats like it.
Can't argue with cats. The internet will get you.
That's the biggest. What about you, Michael?
Well, I mean, I have technically I've been murdered as half of the Green Police.
I've got the video if you want to see it.
So I have been on the receiving end of the execution. Oh God. What is the fine schedule? I mean, I think it starts with like subtle shaming and then rises to full on. Like, Carl and I went to the Vinyl Association's booth at some show where they had salt sitting out to show that they were made out of salt. And across from them was some vendor doing some tequila something. And so we went over and just took salt from the vinyl people and walked over to the tequila people. And so that was like the full on shaming, like, oh, we want to talk. No, we don't. But that was when I hated vinyl. And obviously I've since.
Now you love vinyl.
Now I been brainwashed. I don't know what I would be curious to from the public or from y'all. What should the Green Police be? You know, what should be adjudicating a little more firmly out there? I mean, we've come down hard on five-foil. We've come down pretty hard on insulating
barriers.
Radiant barriers.
Bubble wrap.
We've got some pretty funny
bubble wrap on ducts. Oh
yeah.
God.
Retro, that white nasty formaldehyde junk foam.
Retro foam, yeah.
Retro foam, yeah. We beat up on them pretty hard.
Yeah.
Who are we missing? Who should we be going after?
Well, honestly, there's not a lot of terrible products. It's like, I mean, there's only a few really bad products. It's mostly the implementation that's the problem.
And I think that's where I was going here as a leading question. I spent the morning berating a crew, one for their salesperson lying about the numbers, performance of a spray. I had an architect specify a spray foam hot roof, which we try to always engineer out of our builds. Sometimes the builder doesn't win. So we've got a hot roof. They sprayed the underside of the deck. It was supposed to be 2 inches of closed cell and then a full fill of open. And of course, what I got was maybe like a 3/4 inch flash of closed cell in places, and then somewhere on the order of a 2.5 inch fill of open cell. All good. Like, so this not only does it not meet code, it also won't perform. And so I had a long litany of things that I wanted to find them in a green police verified manner. I wanted it to be blessed from on high so that I could really, change the world in the right way.
Well, yeah, I've come from being a very strong proponent of spray foam when I first got into this like 25 years ago, to finally coming to the conclusion that in most new buildings, needing spray foam is an excuse for a bad design.
Agree.
You don't need it. But on top of that, I can safely say that over the years, I've seen way more incompetent spray foam installations than competent ones. And that actually goes for most insulation in general. But yeah, I mean, we once were certifying a frat house under LEED, and they actually neglected to call us for the pre-drywall inspection. So we went out there and they cut holes in the drywall, and they had installed 2 inches of foam insulation in these walls. So they went through the entire building, cut holes, and blew fiberglass into all the cavities because they just missed. Which makes it like, what drives me a little nuts is that what I do is essentially the quality assurance that the contractor should be doing most of the time. Like, I feel like if people actually did their work, I wouldn't have a job because people wouldn't need us, but they do.
It's kind of like you're the police when it comes to building.
I'm the police. How about that?
I see what you did there, Michael.
Yeah,
very good. Very sure. I appreciate that.
Travis, I don't understand what's with the mixing of materials. I think when I first saw Flash and Bat come out, there was an internal natural revulsion to the concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, you're going to do an inconsistent thickness layer of something that may or and then squish something on top. Just do one material, keep it simple, keep it clean. Like, I get that part, but we do R50, R60 in closed cell spray polyurethane foam up here, but it's one product. Multiple
lifts. Yeah.
One product. And I really don't understand why someone want to jump from one. I get the money side, but the risk is, and it's like
money.
The setup. How can that be more efficient to set up 2 different tanks?
The base product cost.
Yeah. The closed cell is 5x the open cell cost. The tanks are on the same truck, which makes you wonder how often they make the mistake. So one truck, one installer, sometimes 2. And by the time he's done flashing the closed cell, he can go back with the open cell, and he doesn't have the fire risk that he would if he went closed cell, closed cell, closed cell, closed cell. To get to that R60, we would have a fire. So that's the why. It's mostly cost, but it's also time. And unfortunately, the install was bad. The product, I'm not going to say here or there. I don't like it, but that doesn't deny the application. It can work, but I always like to remind people that insulation doesn't work where it ain't. So unless you're encapsulating that magic R value that you think you've achieved in that perfect air seal that they're selling you, it exists inside of that one cavity. But unless you encapsulate, you haven't achieved it. And so I'm preaching to the choir, but explaining what, to Carl's point, that this is really a bad design and we should just fix the design instead of throwing a bad install at it and then pretending that it's okay. That's where I want the fine schedule. And frankly, I would really like to do some execution. So if you guys are hiring, please let me know. I need to quench this rage.
I've got one that raises my blood pressure that I see not a lot, but occasionally. Very high-end builders who are like, the Tyvek, that's not good. The zip system, that's not good. I'm just going to wrap the entire building in ice and water shield because that's expensive and that's more betterer.
Did you say betterer?
More betterer.
More
Yeah.
better.
More betterer. Don't. It's not just betterer. It's more.
Like
betterer.
where is that? Is that like is that a citation? Is that an overnight in the pokey? Is that
We should just bring chairs and iced tea and watch the building rot.
But it's okay,
Oh,
Carl, because
Carl,
it's like
we
an
should
$11
totally
million
do that.
house. It's great. It'll be held up by the cedar.
That
or the
that
ice water
should have
shield.
us-
It'll be structural ice and water shield after a while.
Carl, you fly us out. Carl and I will set up chairs and sit there drinking tea, watching the house until they come out and ask us why.
Well, actually, going back to weather barriers, I feel like I drive down the street and I watch people putting up house wrap, and they somehow have missed the concept that water flows downhill. It's like they're reverse lapping stuff, and I have to restrain myself from jumping out of the car and just yelling at them. It's like, how stupid are you? It's like, that's the thing on the top has to go over the thing on the bottom, not the other way around.
My wife has a running one that as we like approach a job site, I'll just like hear from the driver's seat, it's not your job. She knows what's coming. I can already see the vein in the neck starting to bulge a little bit.
A former client of mine had a modular house she bought used, and it turned out all of the house wrap was installed reverse lapped, and it was vinyl siding, which has pros and cons, but keeping water out is not one of its pros. And the whole house basically had to be demolished because it was all mold and no insurance would cover it or anything. So just it's bad. It can be bad if you don't understand that water follows gravity most of the time.
I actually saw a house recently. It was a contemporary house that some poor couple bought. We did a tiny bit of consulting. The contractor did most of it. It was very modern, no overhangs. They put hardy panel, the big panels, just nailed directly to house wrap, and nothing was flashed right. 5 years in, there were like mushrooms growing out of the walls. They had to basically strip the entire house down and restructure everything. And they were suing everybody and trying to find deep pockets, but it was just the contractor didn't know what they were doing. They were gone after a year, and these poor people just had to live with it. They had to figure out what to do with their house.
Did they offer to sell the mushrooms to Ben? He's into it, man.
Do you remember there was that company they were creating a mushroom insulation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ate some of it.
Theory that if it got wet, it would just grow more of itself, and it was, not harmful to us. So,
Self-healing insulation.
sort of, yeah. It was kind of
They ended up finding their niche as a packaging manufacturer.
Yeah, I think it's worked as packaging.
yeah.
On that subject, I just ordered something today. It just showed up in a little package with cornstarch peanuts. I don't know if you've seen those things. So you don't recycle them. You just stick them in water and they disappear.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
They're very cool. Yeah,
Can you like make pudding?
it just turns into mush, and you just basically put it in compost. Yeah,
Making your
It's
gravy.
cornstarch. Just make tapioca or something, or like
make whatever you want, Michael.
we have a cat who loves eating those. It's his favorite snack. If we ever get a package with the cornstarch peanuts, he's like, love it.
I'll put it in the dog bowl. See how she likes it.
Yeah. On the other end of the spectrum is the packaging, which is basically put the material in a bag in the box and then spray foam all around it.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of spray foam for packaging. Some equipment I ordered that I have to take it to the recycling place. It's sitting in my carport just in a big pot. Very annoying.
Do any of you follow the Gold Star inspections gentleman on Instagram? I am routinely blown away with somebody just made the comment like, hey, you Carl, if people would just do it right, and it's not complicated, but just do it right. Actually put the products where they're supposed to be, take the extra minute or two to install them properly. He had one where the windows were installed backwards.
Mm-hmm. The locks were on the outside of the building.
Yes.
That's good.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you think how bad can it get? How far how badly can people do things?
Oh,
I
worse.
had I had a moment, like I grew up in New England here, and like we have a pretty good heritage of craftsmanship up here, and I kind of took it for granted. And then as I started traveling, I realized I got down to Atlanta. I was with Allison Bales doing my hers thing 10, 12 years ago, and we went to test in one of those tract houses, and I'm walking in and I see a Hardy shingle, and I can read Hardy upside down on the shingle because they had installed the shingle backwards right next to the front door and like finished the entire building. It's like, how did that get past? How many people walked past that?
Well, it's people get paid by the piece. People get paid, subcontractors get paid by piecework, and there's little or no quality control. I feel like in general in the construction industry, the people who are paid to supervise the jobs tend to not have the depth of knowledge they need, and they certainly don't have the time. I mean, they're working their asses off trying to get everything done, and they need twice as many people or twice as many hours to actually get on everything. There's the quality, new homes. There's hardly any supervisors on site anytime. The sub comes out and do things. I mean, I've been to jobs to inspect insulation, say on like the 5th floor of a building. The superintendent tells me it's done. I go up to the 5th floor. It's not done. The insulator told him it was done, but he never went up and looked at it because he didn't have time to go see that it was done. That's the industry. That's what it is. Unfortunately.
Yeah, in the chat, Doug Horgan says they worked on a house where the Hardy name was visible on every plank because they installed 8-inch lap with a 9-inch exposure.
Well,
that's probably.
I think people reading instructions is sort of like a lost art. People will put something in and it doesn't work, and it's what a piece of crap. And it's like, if you read the instructions, you've noticed they didn't install it right.
Yeah.
My favorite is roofers with shingles. I'm like, have you guys ever read the instructions? They're like, no. I'm like, it's printed on every goddamn bundle that
Right.
you pick up by the dozen every day. You haven't just read a paragraph at a time over a month. Like,
well, the other
think about how much
like,
printed text is on a sheet of OSB now, right? I mean, it's like nail here. They write in, please gap over here. I mean, it's right. They're trying as hard as they can to try to get us to do it the right way, which I think actually, Ben, you asked the question, what's something that we learned that is still true today or that carries forward? And that is, I think Carl and I would both agree. We've run across some really interesting stuff and some interesting ideas, but they either require perfect installation or they're complicated. Like there's a series of additional steps. Like there's some cool ideas that get thrown out about we could build a wall like this, right? But as soon as you've deviated, half a degree from, nail it up, you failed. And if you're relying on that system to work, right? So it's increasingly whatever we put into the marketplace, as forward thinking as it might be, if it doesn't fit within a framer's regular way of thinking or a sider's regular way of thinking, it's gonna be installed wrong. And we're talking about like basic stuff like Hardy, where the printing is one side, it's clearly the back side of the product, and that's still being installed wrong. That's the level that the industry is at.
Yeah,
someone said they put a mini split in backwards in the chat. How do you? How?
Yeah. Oh, the guys who installed the mini splits in my house made some serious mistakes on that. But half of what I do is our company inspects insulation, and it has to be grade 1, which happens to be the manufacturer's recommended instructions.
Read the instructions
and code basically, but so few people can actually do it. We get it, and we get it frequently enough, but it takes a struggle, and a lot of people complain. It's like it's just do it right. It's like I'm not to do anything. I'm not going to do anything more than competence. It's all about just one competence. Please just do that with me.
Carl, will you like resting happily on his front porch when competence has been achieved in the world? This is when your anger dies away, and
otherwise he's going to just be on his
to be upset about.
curmudgeonly on his green porch, on his front porch. Here, you also had a great comment a while ago at one of the symposiums talking about exactly that, Michael, and about how like we need to create systems where it's like you have the opening and then like the window just clicks into it and through some mechanical means of gasketing, it's done. Like we do this for car doors, that kind of thinking. So it's like we have to, and it's sad to say this, to some degree, dumb these things down because as you get out there in the world, and especially as like these techniques get more visibility in front of the industry, we're seeing more and more of people making attempts at these and butchering it. So it's like even when the best intended people are trying to do these things, they're still failing. Now we're expecting to drag the rest of the industry along up to this. Like that's a
And then
proposition of
add on top of that all the shiny new objects, right? All the new materials that get introduced. I had an interesting meeting last week. Someone here up in Minneapolis where they have, story and a half house finished off, fiberglass insulation put into the slope ceiling, compressed. Right, this is like we see it all the time, and it's super hot in the summer and freezing cold in the winter, and they've got some dripping moisture back on the sheeting, right? And so this guy sent me these really cool drawings that he'd done after doing reading, on the internet and whatnot, for how he was going to layer layers of Roxol and some wood fiber and all of these super complicated things, but all to the inside.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, dude, that none of those things, no. And he was super bummed. He was like, had gone down this path of wanting to build this elaborate thing, but it all needed to be in reverse, which wasn't possible. So I think people get super confused. Even the pros get confused. There's so much information that is nuanced and it's market driven. Like you guys have issues with spray foam installers in other markets. And up here, we've got like pretty good. I mean, we've used 3 or 4 different companies. They all do really good installs. Like that for us is not a challenge. Right. But like Carl said, insulation being installed properly anywhere, regardless of the type, whether it's batt insulation or sprayed in product, seeing it done right is hard to find.
I saw
in some ways, Robin Clevitt, is that his name? Yeah,
British guy.
And he made the comment the other day that we need to really rethink our insulation trades as not like that's no longer a labor trade. That is a highly skilled trade. Like that's a carpenter level, cutting things neatly to an 1/8 of an inch so that they fit well and they're taped well and they're addressed well. But that comes with a much higher price point.
Right. Yeah. It's like people have to be willing to pay for it, which the majority industry is not,
And you need designers to understand the principles to begin with. We were just on this crazy multi-million-dollar house a couple of weeks ago, and they had built a double stud wall essentially. And so 2x6 exterior wall, 2x4 interior wall, 3-inch gap between. And they were having the framers rip strips of EPS foam and glue it to the 2x6 to thermally break between the two. I'm like, y'all are filling this thing full of cellulose. You realize that's doing the exact same thing as that foam that you're gluing there. It's just like this disconnect. Like this is a high-dollar architect on a high-dollar project, just not even understanding basic fundamentals of what they were doing.
Yeah.
God forbid you criticize an architect.
I've seen lots of architectural drawings that
I do all the time. What are you talking about, Michael?
I've seen lots of architectural drawings where the weather barrier is referred to as a vapor barrier. It's like it's just drawn, like labeled as vapor barrier. It's like, nope, that's wrong.
Just today on an architect forum I'm on, somebody asked if all residential homes should be required to be designed and stamped by an architect to ensure they were designed and built properly. And I really had to stifle my response to that.
It depends on the architect. Depends on the
yes.
designer.
Some are good, some are bad. Yeah.
Depends on the builder. Oh, man. Ugh.
And
That's so true.
and to be fair to builders, like when I learned how to build things in the 80s around here, it was, do you build with 2x4s or 2x6? That was it. Like the exterior was plywood. Eventually OSB was coming in. Insulation was always fiberglass, no question. Some debate whether interior poly or not. But besides that, it was just that is how you built. Now we have hundreds, thousands of different ways to build walls with all these different high-tech materials. It's complicated.
And I think smaller mistakes make bigger problems. Like the better we get at it, the better you have to be to make sure that a small mistake that wasn't an issue when we just had these big old drafty things that we cooked, wasn't an issue. I just sat on a mold seminar yesterday, and it's just, well, let's talk about water in buildings and mold and adverse health effects, and oops, we dropped that inside with you, and oh well, like oops, so.
One thing I was just looking at questions. One of the worst building failures you asked about. One thing just came to mind is that like we see so much carelessness in both design and construction. One is really bad, both is a disaster. When it's like bad design. A good builder can usually rescue a bad design. A good architect may be able to help a bad builder get through a project, but when you got both, it's just like. Bring the iced tea and watch the building rot.
Lloyd Alter's got a good one here that I'll throw in. It says, isn't this a good justification for passive house where someone's going to come in and actually test it with a red door of truth, and that doesn't let shit get past?
I have a response to that. There's a lot of bullshit in building certification. I don't know about passive house in particular, but
there's plenty there too.
But in general, I certify buildings. We do our best to do it right. I know that there are people out there that are essentially giving away Energy Star certifications on new homes, on new production homes. I think there are a lot of very good rating companies out there. I am concerned about rating companies that are their own providers. I think there's a potential conflict of interest there that can lead to some substandard ratings. I think that people in the industry are generally well intentioned and try and do a good job, but having it certified is always good, but does it guarantee performance? Nope.
But I do think for continuing education, it would be good, at least from the design professional perspective, to take some of these certification programs to know what you don't know, right? Like I've taken a lot of them. I learned something new from each one. Oh yeah. All right. That's cool. Same with sort of the like passive pod workshops too for, like builders or whatever. Like I think there's a lot of great training available that people just don't take advantage of either. Like, do they need to be certified? Maybe not. Should things be verified? Probably yes. And I 100% agree with you, Carl, that there are some places out there that are just like handing out certifications for things. And unfortunately, in the production building world, when you make a mistake, you copy, print, repeat that a lot more than us custom home builders, right? Like we make a mistake and we're kind of upset about that, but like it's not copy, print, repeated 1,000 times. And so, getting them on board. I at BS and Beer last night. One of the contractors said to me that they just hired a new person. They came from somewhere else in the country, and they were like, they came from a production crew that they were just constantly being yelled at because they weren't fast enough and they weren't doing things correctly. And they're, up on the roof doing something, and they're just like, oh man, I'm so stupid. And they're like, you're not stupid. Hey, here's the way that we do this. No one here is gonna yell at you. Like, let's, and that's unfortunate. The fast-paced environment. And someone in the chat also commented about this, and I think this is also valid, is there are plenty of places in the country where there is a language barrier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Something comes to mind, we're starting to see, again, my market's multifamily primarily. And one of the hopeful things I've seen is we'll be working on a project for the developer. And the contractor will hire us, like we were in a building the other day, a multifamily building. They had us moisture test all the lumber in the building before they dried it in, and we gave them a whole. We basically tested hundreds of spots. That was great. And that same contractor the client hired us to do window leakage testing. The contractor's hiring us separately to come in and do window leakage testing before we do it for the client. Because I mean, I feel good about it because these guys they want to do it right, you know. So they're working hard to get it right, and it feels good. It feels good to be able to do those things.
Yeah.
So I know that Lloyd was. I know that Lloyd was baiting me. I know, and I appreciate it. Comments on Passive House have not been kind over the years. I want to make. I want to comment that Passive House US. Katrina has done a lot to shift that program away from the really garbage program that came to the US from Wolfgang, because that thing was a mess and it didn't work and it didn't scale and the focus was backwards in my opinion. And it didn't look at occupant behavior and it treated the house as a lab, and it was not about a house as a place for people to live. It was a house looking at it through the lens of efficiency. And I think that the shift towards the changes they've made to the program, where it looks increasingly like a LB, like a little bit more like an LBC meets LEED meets a green building program, where they're starting to talk about occupant behavior and carbon.
Don't forget Pretty Good House.
Yeah, I Passive House. I just want to say, Lloyd, I am more accepting of Passive House today because it is different. However, the red door of truth, to Carl's point, is not the red door of truth. I think I can walk into a house and I have a pretty good sense before the blower door's been turned on of what it's gonna look like. And I have a pretty good sense at the end of a project of roughly where it's gonna be before the door is turned on. Right? It feels different. When you close and open the door, different things happen to the house. That stuff you can kind of get a good sense for. But regardless of how tight the house might be, things like bad design, right? Where we still have, little dormers that the roof is pitched right towards a window, and there may or may not be a kickout flashing on that thing, and there's a ton of water. I mean, we did a calc for one homeowner, fancy architect design house, and it was dumping something like 700 gallons of water in a half inch rainfall event, which isn't that big event, right? Like 2 giant roof planes all landed on like a 6x4 flat roof over the front door. So I don't care how tight,
because gutters are ugly.
Oh, and no gutters because they're ugly, and they wanted to do all these little window recess pop-up thing. I mean, right? But fancy architect, that's cool. But an absolute disaster. And we looked at this thing, and I don't care how well you insulate it or, rain screen it or do anything. This thing is destined to die, right? There's just way too much water hitting materials, and they're going to accumulate. In the winter, it's going to freeze. It's like, dude, we're going to heat your roof. The only way to make this building work is going to be to heat your roof and then put 3 huge scuppers and then a giant cistern by your front door. And then the house might live. So all of the programs are good in terms of moving people, like Pretty Good House as well. You guys are all involved in that. It's good stuff for good, best building practices, which is what we're all after. All of which can be undone by shitty design. Right?
Or by poor workmanship.
Many years ago, I was building a house. This is in the 80s, before I knew anything about high performance construction. And the architect had this detail. It was just a mess. And I sat in the meeting, I said, the only thing I can guarantee you is that this is going to leak. And I said, build it anyway. And it leaked. I was right. So it's just like, it was the strangest thing. It's like, it's gonna, and actually I was on a call today about an Energy Star project. And I said, you basically have to put a 6-inch duct on the range and a 5-inch duct on the bath fan, or it's going to fail.
Wow.
And they said, well, the structural engineer only said we can have 4-inch ducts. And I said, well, then your project won't certify, and you need the certification for your tax credit. So you pick. What do you want to do?
Just for posterity, I should relay some of Dr. Joe's comments to Michael. One was that ger, 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 German pH was a bad joke. Cat fixed it pretty well for the U.S. And we agree on something final. Finally, Anschel.
Awesome. Finally. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
And Joe is not buying Ben a drink anymore because he likes Italian
And Joe's
cars.
not buying Ben a drink.
It's cut off.
He
That's
said they
it.
build good cars. I figured he must be talking about the Italians.
Joe and I think we also agree on the German car thing. I think that we're both on the same page there.
All right.
All right, so I got one of the setup questions for both of you. What's the next asbestos?
Floods.
Ooh.
I think it's going to be air quality, just like humidity, mold, all this stuff. And what that comes to mind, it kind of let me some other thoughts, is that I'm getting very frustrated with mechanical systems, because I feel like a good mechanical system is obscenely complicated. You have a heat pump, or furnace or heat pump, and a ventilation system, and a dehumidifier,
And a humidifier.
And a humidifier now. Yeah.
Well, so how is anybody expected to make all that stuff work properly? Even if it works properly at the beginning, who's going to make sure it works properly on an ongoing period of time? I feel like, I know they make that CERV, which I think is probably a little overly complicated. There's got to be a way for mechanical systems to get simpler, to be, so we don't need to have PhDs and super smart people managing the design and the installation of them, because they're not working, and they're not maintained. So I don't know.
I don't know that it's going to simplify it any, Carl, but I think the controls are probably the future of that we're not going to be able to dumb down the architecture of the mechanical systems, but we're going to find better ways to control them.
Yeah. I don't have any answers. I just look at it, I just see good systems are getting more and more complicated. Crappy systems are still simple, but good systems are incredibly complicated. And, finding the people to install them right and to manage them is really challenging.
I think a couple of weeks ago, Carl, you and I were at a show, and we were looking at some different controls that were coming online, and we had a similar conversation where it was really getting all of the equipment to talk to each other, because you really needed the ERV and the boiler furnace and the exhaust ventilation. That you really needed those things to be talking to each other and checking to see what was going on in the house to decide which one was going to do what when. Right. And the more that gets dialed in and simplified with a simple, touchpad type interface that is, I pick sport mode or I pick economy mode, or it's got to be like that, right? Where we're not micromanaging all the systems in our car. We just pick the mode that we want to be in, and that's the mode that it moves into. And I think that's really the future of mechanicals. It's got to be the future of mechanicals.
There's some comments in the chat too, and I think along with that is when it stops functioning that way, it starts setting off. Like when my smoke detector batteries go off, it's like the most obnoxious thing ever. I don't know. There are people who live with that thing beeping all the time. Like that would drive me crazy. But I think I was out at the AIA CRAN conference in Seattle last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't know, whatever it was. And, someone commented to me about something that I had said about vented crawl spaces, and they were like, oh, you can't rely on mechanical ventilation because every trade that's going to come in here afterwards is going to do something. So like relying on a dehumidifier is just not reasonable. Like our dehumidifier died after 7 or 8 years. And I was like, how long is it expected to last? Right? Like, it's this thing that's managing water constantly. So I think that I'm hoping that part of the controls are when you haven't done something, it's going to make the most obnoxious sound in the world until you find somebody to help you with the thing that is happening with it. So
on smoke detectors, they have a 10-year life. So one of mine started beeping, and I changed the battery to all kinds of things that I realized it was telling me, you have to replace me now.
And it's at 2 a.m. when it does.
It never stopped making noise. I had to disconnect it all and go buy a new one because it was not repairable. It was done.
My 4-year-old was traumatized when she was an infant, and she to this day refers to smoke detectors as the beep beep, because one of them started screaming at her in the middle of the night because it wanted its battery changed. And that was the terrifying thing. So, she, for months and months, she was like, I don't want to go to sleep in my room with the beep beep. I agree, though. So whoever owns Centrair, that big multinational thing, they did put something into one of their lines where the thermostat would call them. Like, it would put a notification, but then it would call the tech, and then you'd get a call from the tech, and it would go something like, "Hey, your furnace called me, and there's something's not functioning properly." And I thought that was the first step because, right, most of our cars do
There's more of
these
that
days as
coming.
well,
Like
right?
there's that Haven system right now, which you plug into the air handler and watches static humidity and particulate or something like that, and feeds back to the tech to give them basically a health check of the system.
Yeah,
And to your point, Michael, a lot of the companies like Panasonic and Bosch and stuff like that are starting to make the range hood talk to the bath fan, talk to the range, talk to the ERV. The only complaint that I have there to offer is that they're doing it with their own proprietary languages, which is going to be a problem because we can't expect everybody to have to buy into one suite of a system. Like, I might
yeah,
want the Bosch cooktop, but I do not want the Bosch heat pump.
yeah. Yeah, open API. I mean, this is what we do on the software side of the world, right? We talk about open APIs. Really, in the mechanical world, they need open APIs. There was, I think it was Samsung, maybe it was a Chinese company, where the range hood and the range talk to each other. And if the temperature at the range ever exceeds a certain amount, the range hood automatically kicks on. And then if it goes up beyond
Bosch has it right
another
now.
point, it turns the cooktop off. Like, it was all these fail safes to make sure that you wouldn't have a fire in the kitchen.
We've talked multiple times. We referred to how things work in cars, and there's this whole thing. Like, I've had this analogy for years that, like, if we built cars like we built houses, we dump the parts in the front yard, people would come and assemble it in the rain, and would you drive that car? I mean, and modular housing, factory built housing has benefits, but it's got a lot of challenges and stuff. I don't know that we are capable as a society, the way we're designed to actually build houses the way we're building them at that level, so they function like that. Because, I mean, like I say, cars are great products. It's astounding how well they work, and I don't see a path to get houses to work anywhere near that level.
So
There's
Lloyd
not.
has a comment here. Sorry, Emily, that this is all an invitation for disaster, that we need to go to simplicity. We need to super insulate and let the building envelope do the work. And I just
That's
want to
Lloyd.
share there that, Lloyd, that was the romantic idea that I had 20 years ago, but now I'm in a situation where I've built super insulated buildings with very simple mechanical systems, and they have problems because that very simple mechanical system isn't up to the challenge of what actually happens inside of that building. So that's why, to Carl's point, we're adding dehumidifiers, we're adding humidifiers, we're adding ventilation, because we're having to do these things to keep people comfortable and healthy in that space. That old idea that, back in the early days of passive house, that you put the mini split on the wall and we'll let the ERV do the distribution. Well, that doesn't actually work, but like there's still people that think that that's the approach.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna say to Carl's response though, the indoor air quality inside my car is not fantastic, and I don't know if this is all cars across the board, but I took my little Aeronet because I'm nerdy like Allison, and he's like, get one of these, and I took my Aeronet, and there were four of us in the car when we were going to building science camp, um, and it spiked to like 4,000 parts per million.
I
On
didn't mean to imply that the air quality should be great in a car, but
no
the
no no
systems in the car are generally good.
I just thought that was funny, but I want to go back to something that was posted in the chat like a million years ago, as maybe something that's like the new asbestos, which is poly on the wrong side of the wall as climate changes. Like how many of our buildings are rotting because we've got poly vapor barriers in some interesting wall conditions as I agree, Ben. The houses that we built in 2015 now need air conditioning and dehumidification and a bunch of other things. And 2015 was not as big of an issue, but is much more critical you know, when I moved to Maine in 2007, like it was freezing. I don't think it got above 75 and it was not humid the whole time, like the whole summer. And this year we had 6 weeks of crazy humidity. And so still wasn't hot. It was just really humid.
Carl's trying to export his climate to Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's working.
There-
It's fucking
There
working.
have been
because
days when it's
like
hotter in Minneapolis than Atlanta. I've
we
watched
had like 30. We're supposed to have 13 degrees, 13 days above 90 degrees. That's what like kind of the norm for us. Last year we had 40 days above 90 degrees. This year was better. I know who made that comment, Doug, because he and I have talked about it quite a bit, and it's a very real issue as things change. And like where I am, where most people put 6 mil poly on the inside of the wall, really for the last 40 years, right? And it unlike the 70s where people use craft face bats, where there actually is some forgiveness in that material, there isn't forgiveness in the other material. Wallpaper has come back into vogue, and we're seeing tons of wallpaper.
vinyl wall covering. Yeah.
Well, here's actually, Carl. So I said to a bunch of designers, hey, no vinyl wallpapers are allowed, blah, 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 thinking that covers it. Turns out the grass cloth wallpaper, the backing on the grass cloth wallpaper still has like a perm rating of like 0.02.
Oh, man.
Right. So even if it's not vinyl wallpaper, it's vapor impermeable. And I do think that we're going to see 20 years from maybe not even that far out. I think we're going to start to see a whole host of issues in the northern climates where they thought that they were building assemblies the right way. And I think this, Emily, I'm going to work that comment back to the last conversation and say an unpopular opinion. The energy that we expended on our homes when insulation and energy efficiency wasn't the everything, allowed for kind of the absolution of many sins.
Yeah, the building's dried out. Yeah,
right. The houses dried out, and so if we were to look and say, well, what is the energy calculation? Like if we said we're losing this much energy to the building, but the building is durable. And we compared that with the energy we spend and the materials, resources, and investment we spend in all of these complicated materials, some of which are resource intensive, some of which are less, some of which are installation intensive, some of which are less. Would we actually be tipping the scale in any direction? Or are we just kind of like maintaining the status quo, if anything, making our structures more susceptible, like, right? Because truthfully, we could just like let them be a little bit.
But Michael,
Worse.
that's great because you're just taking energy into account there. But the other part of this is we take energy out. Now we have to talk about the comfort and health of the person inside of the house. Because how do you intentionally make a building leak in the spots that you want it to make it?
Well, I mean, yeah, right. I mean, that said, Ben, right? I mean, we're in a cold climate, and they built up here, for a couple hundred years, and they would put a large coating and split the wall, and they have these, like we have these cool walls. We open up the plaster and lath, and inside the wall is another layer of lath with some sort of a mortar, and they created 2 little air chambers. And then they put on a lath and plaster, and it was fairly airtight, right? Nothing like drywall. And there were 2 little air chambers in there. It was mildly well insulated, and you got to draw pictures in the frost and the glass. It was fun. But my point being is, I'm not saying that we actually should go back and do that. But for those people who say, dude, what you're describing with these assemblies and these systems sounds like a freaking nightmare because you're building it in the rain with the lowest paid unskilled labor that isn't reading the instructions. Yeah, that's a problem also. But that's going back is also not necessarily the solution. And so whatever it is that we do with our buildings, they're in a state of flux. The controls that control the equipment are going to need to be a lot more intelligent. They are going to need to talk to each other. But we can't say like, well, let's super insulate and not have mechanical systems that will manage, what's happening inside the house. Those 2 things, they don't work.
Michael has succeeded again in not letting anybody else get a word in edgewise. He's really good at that.
Oh, come on.
I was just going to jump back to something, talking about the vapor barriers in the walls. And I have a recollection in the 1980s when I was building and renovating that there was a company called Guaranteed Watt Saver that was coming in your house and stapling poly on the walls and guaranteeing energy efficiency. This is in Georgia. I never took advantage of it. And I don't know what the houses look like, but actually, I think Joe made a comment that the good news is that they will be too wet to burn. I think that's the kind of houses that's the way those houses turned out.
Positive, yeah.
Oh man.
Well, and Ben's comment about comfort, like do we really need every room to be within 0.3 degrees of each other? Like my house, we have the 90-degree wood stove room and the 70-degree living room and the 50-degree bedroom. It's not necessarily comfortable, but it works. Like we've
been pretty spoiled as Americans.
Yeah, it's like ooh, there's a draft.
I mean, a couple hundred years ago, people just like put coats on. They slept near fireplaces and things.
Right.
And they sweated a lot in the summertime.
It was less than 100 years ago, Carl.
Yeah, right.
I think to Michael's comment there about controls, I share Lloyd's sentiment about wanting things to be simple, but I don't think we're going to be able to simple our way to this because we've tried all those things. I'm also terrified that we can't technology our way out of this, but I think that's where we're headed. There's Silicon Valley startups that have reached out to me about interest of putting wireless sensors into building assemblies in rot-prone areas, like under windows and things like that, under plumbing locations, and then using that as a way to reduce your insurance rate, because if it's being actively monitored, there's going to be less likelihood of you filing a claim against your homeowner's policy. And there's money behind those initiatives. I think we're just not there yet. It's like going to be watching the dew point at your sheathing and then adjusting your humidifier and dehumidifier to try and bring the home back into a safe range and minimize the damage.
Yeah.
Sounds very complicated.
Right? I'm sure it'll get installed correctly, Carl.
Exactly. Yeah. It'll work perfectly for 20 years too.
It'll work for about it only needs to work for the year that my warranty covers it. Beyond that, they're on their own.
Oh, build to 20? Oh God. Right? I mean that is the house is a commodity is a problem. When we throw the word affordable into the mix, it gets even worse.
Well, actually, I tend to disagree, Michael. I work with a lot of affordable multifamily developers, and they tend to be long-term holds. And we're seeing them getting more and more interested in building better buildings that they're not going to have to tear apart and redo too frequently. That's actually some of the best construction I work on is affordable housing. It's
the multifamily stuff.
Yeah, multifamily tax credit affordable housing.
Maybe they understand risk management a little bit more after having to put dehumidifiers in everything and paying for a lot of lawsuits, right? Wasn't that where we started? So I'm the bearer of bad news. We went almost 10 minutes over tonight, but obviously we could we spent 4 days at summer camp just doing this. So like
it doesn't go to 7:30, it's just 7 now. We're just an hour.
We only go to 7 now. Like people have lives, I guess. I don't know. I don't. Like I just want to talk about building science.
Well, you guys will bluster on forever. As some of our other
Hey, look at that. Hi.
It's fall in Minnesota.
It's fall in Minnesota. That's right. She's got gloves on and long sleeves and long pants and socks,
40
probably.
degrees.
Yeah. Matt, I just want to make a comment. Matt Dirksen just said, "I hope I'm doing well after Helena." And Helena completely skirted Atlanta. It like trashed Eastern Georgia and then just destroyed North Carolina. But we had I wasn't here at the time, but we had nothing happened. We didn't have a branch down in my neighborhood. It's kind of,
Dad, we're leaving right now.
That was some,
Just informed that my family is leaving right now to Grandpa's house.
Yeah,
Okay.
see? So
See, Michael?
apparently we went 10 minutes too long. You don't have time to do anything else or get a jacket or anything. You got to go now. So it was awesome having you guys. It's always fun to do these kind of like building failures, building industry, where are we going, what are we doing kind of things with you guys for Halloween every year. So thank you for coming on and joining us. Per usual, it's awesome to have you.
All right, good to see you all.